Hi, this is a tutorial on creating cues and loops in Rekordbox. In this tutorial, I'll be breaking things up into two segments. In the first, which will be short, I will quickly explain how to create these things. And then in the second, longer segment, I'm going to go into detail about how they work, how you might use them while you're DJing, how they interact with CDJ and XDJ players, and a few other topics, such as I'll be going over some Rekordbox settings. All right, to get your screen looking roughly the same as mine, you'll want to select these options. Over here, one player, on the left, cue loop, and over here on the right, select memory. And now we're going to create a loop. There are two different modes to create loops with, and you can switch between them here. So mode 1 and mode 2. In mode 1, we have preset lengths of loops that we can choose from, 4, 8, and so on. So I'm going to select a 4-beat loop, and I'll just drop the needle over a beat that I want to start from, and click here. And that's it. I've created a 4-beat loop. To deactivate it, you click the same number again. All right, now I'm going to use this second loop creation mode. And this one is useful because you can create a loop of any length, an odd number of beats or bars, anything you want. So once again, you'll place the needle over the beat you want to start from. And now we click in. That will set the loop start point. Then play the track. And when you want the loop to end, click out. And there it is. We've created a 12-beat loop. And that is not possible with the first mode because 12 beats is not one of your preset options. And to turn the loop off here, you select exit. Next, we're going to go over how to create memory cues and also some variations on memory cues. The first, we'll just do a simple memory cue right on the first beat of this song. And to do that, we click cue and then memory. And that's it. We've created a memory cue point and it appears over here on the right on this list. Next, we're going to create a memory cue loop, which is a memory cue point that has a loop associated with it. To do that, we first create a loop, then we click here. And that's it. Now we have a memory cue loop. Next, we're going to create an active loop. To do that, we'll repeat the same process that we just did to create this memory cue loop. We're just going to add one additional step on. So first, we'll create a loop. I'll use the second mode this time. Then we click memory. And finally, we click on this icon. The orange arrow will turn red, and that tells us that we've converted it into an active loop. Now I'll explain what that is and what it does a little bit later. Next, we're going to create hot cues. To create a hot cue, place the needle over a beat and click one of these empty letters over here. And that's it. We've created a hot cue. To create a hot cue loop, first create a loop and then click one of these available hot cue letters. And you can see that we've created a hot cue loop, which is represented by this orange circular arrow over here. So that concludes the first segment of this tutorial. Now I'm going to go into more detail about all these things, about how they work and how you can use them. Now, just to start from a clean slate, I'm going to delete the cue points that I've already created and bring us back to the beginning of this song. Now, before I start going into more detail about these cues and loops, I want to go over a couple of Rekordbox settings. So I'm just going to open up the preferences and then pick out a couple of things to look at here. So under View, down here we have a color scheme for hot cues. Colorful gives you a wide range of colors. These first three options basically give you different shades of blue. Now, the colors that you see in Rekordbox might not be the same as the colors that you see on your Pioneer player, on your CDJ or XDJ. But I find it's not really that much of a distraction to have the colors be different. The letters are the same, A, B, C, D, and so on. So that's what's important. All right, under CDJ and Device, My Settings tab, you want Hot Cue Auto Load on, and then on this Hot Cue tab, Prepare Hot Cue for CDJ, you want that checked because we want all the hot cues that we create in Rekordbox to be loaded into our player when we're DJing. And over here on Advanced, on the Others tab, set your quantized beat value to 1. If you have a good reason for it, you can set it to something less than 1, but 1 is sort of the default value. All the loops and cue points you create will land precisely on a beat. They'll start and end on beats. All right, now we have a couple of other options that we can access with this menu. And this one down the bottom, click on waveform for play and cue. It's just a little shortcut you can use. You can just left click here to start and stop the track. And you can right click anywhere on here to create a cue point. So you can see that where the needle is, it's created a cue point. So this is just a right click anywhere on here. Same thing as moving over here and pressing the cue button. Active loop playback, set that to on. To put this simply, this will cause Rekordbox to behave the same way that your CDJ or XDJ does, which is a good thing. And beat count display, select this option in the middle here. Same thing, this will cause Rekordbox to behave the same way as most Pioneer players, CDJ 2000, XDJ 1000, and other ones. And these things will make a little more sense, these options we've selected, once I explain a little more detail about memory cues. All right. So I'm going to talk some more about the memory cues. Now, we can think of a memory cue as a group of features in Rekordbox. So we have 3 different types of them. We have a simple memory cue, which I've just created here. We have memory cue loop, which I've created there, and the active loop. So these are 3 different things that are similar but behave differently, and they all appear in this list on the right. So we can think of them as variations of one feature, variations of the memory cue, because they all are memory cues. They all have this red arrow, and this is a point that we can jump to instantly using some buttons on a CDJ, but they behave differently. So I'm going to explain each one of these things, but just think of them as kind of a family of features that are related. All right, so the way that we'll typically want to use these things, these different types of memory cues, is it's basically 3 primary functions. The first is to choose a point to start playing your track from. The second is to place markers through the middle of a track that will just help you keep tabs on where you are in the song. So you might place them on moments in the song where an instrument comes in or an instrument drops out. some kind of change like that. A vocal part begins, whatever you like. And then finally, the third one will be to place an active loop somewhere near the end of the song that will give you an infinitely looping point. And it will turn itself on automatically. Like once you set this up beforehand, that part of the song will always be a loop. You don't have to do anything. Just whenever you reach that point in a song, it will start looping. So I'm going to set up these three types of memory cues right now and use this song as an example of how I might do it. So you can be imaginative and use these features however you think will work for you. But I'm just going to show you one way that you can use them, and how I would typically set these up for a song. So first, we're going to give ourselves some options as to where we might want to start playing this track from. Now, maybe you want to just start at the beginning. I like to have a memory cue point on the first beat, so we'll go ahead and drop one there. So there's one option. We can start playing from the beginning. Next, I'm going to choose a couple of points, a little bit, like a few bars into the song, where I might want to begin playback from. So right there's a percussion part that comes in here. And what I'm going to do is create a loop on that point, a memory cue loop, and that'll give me a second option as to where I might want to begin playing this song from. What I mean by that is that while I'm DJing, I load the track up and I just skip ahead to this exact point and press play, and that is the point where I begin the song. So I just skip the beginning entirely. So here's my memory cue loop. There it is. And I'm going to give myself another option, a third option. I'll create another one of these a little further up. So right there's a shaker that comes in. So on that point, I'll create another memory cue loop. We'll do a little bit longer on this one. And there it is. So these are three different options for where we might want to begin playing from. I like to always start playing with a loop because it's very easy to just deactivate it. It's easier to shut a loop off than it is to create a new one. So I like to just always have the beginning of a song that I'm going to play be a loop. If you don't want it to be a loop, then you can just create a regular memory cue point. All right, next I'm just going to drop a few memory cues throughout the middle of the track, and I'm not going to really explain why I'm placing them here. You can decide where you think it would be good to drop these, but these are just little markers to kind of keep tabs on where we are in the song as it's playing. All right, so I've just put 3. You can place up to 10 total, and these will all be visible and available to you in your CDJ or XDJ. Now, a quick note on different types of Pioneer players. They don't all work the same, and for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to be referring to how things will work with 3 different players. CDJ 2000 Nexus, Nexus 2, and also the XDJ 1000 Mark II. For any other player, I'll leave it to you to just figure out what features it has, whether it has hot cues, whether it has 8 hot cues or 3 hot cues, and you can work out the details from there. Now, the last thing I'm going to do in this example is place an active loop, which is an extremely useful feature. I'm going to throw that in near the end of the track and show you how it works. All right, so I'm going to choose this point right here where the hi-hat drops out. One of the hi-hats drops out. So I'll create a loop, turn it into a memory loop, and then finally click this icon and convert it into an active loop. And by the way, you can only have one active loop in any given song. Here's how an active loop works. While your song is playing and working its way up to where the active loop is, you'll see that once it reaches that point, the loop will turn on automatically. Now, this is the only type of loop that will do that. This is a special thing. This is kind of the special feature of an active loop, is that it turns itself on while the song just kind of plays naturally up to that point. None of the other loops will do that. So here at the beginning, I have a couple of memory cue loops. If you just start playing the song before this point, once it passes this point, nothing happens. There is a loop here, but it's not going to be turned on. The same thing goes with any of the other ones. So you have to manually press a button to get that loop to be turned on. With this active loop, it kicks itself on all by itself. One other feature that is worth noting here is the countdown. So I'll show you how that works. I've placed the needle to a couple of bars before this memory cue point, and you can see that right here I have this number. This is a countdown in bars and beats to the next memory cue. You can see once it goes past that memory cue, we get a new countdown, which is telling us how many bars and beats until the next one. So this works for every memory cue point. It'll just keep counting down and keep resetting. So countdown, and then it resets. All right, now we're doing all this work here in Rekordbox, but it's important to understand how these features are going to appear and how you can use them on your CDJ or XDJ. So what I'm going to do is I'll just reload this track. So you can see all of these memory cue points and loops have all been saved, and the track is auto-loaded to the first memory cue point. And the way that you would make use of these things that you've saved here is like this. So on our CDJ 2000, which we'll use as an example, I'll show you an image of that here. So this is the CDJ 2000 Nexus 2. We would use these buttons here. So we would load the track, and then we would press this button here either once or twice to select one of those first loops that we set up. So if I wanted to select the first one, I would just click this button once, and the equivalent of that in Rekordbox is these buttons here. So I advance to my second memory cue, which is the first of these two loops that I've created, and you can see that it's turned on. This is the exact same thing that will happen with your CDJ. When you click here, it will advance you to that loop and turn the loop on. And you can use these to advance through all of the memory cue points if that's what you want to do. But typically the way I would use this is to just pick one of them right near the beginning of the track and start playing and mixing in from there. The remainder of them are just used as visual cues to keep tabs on where I am. And then this last one, it's not really used. It just kind of works on its own. So the song just gets to that point and the active loop turns itself on and just keeps on looping until you deactivate it. So lots of useful features in the memory cues and loops, but there are also drawbacks to these things. So there are things that can't be done with these. And the main drawback is that once you start playing a song and you're mixing it in through the sound system, you really can't select any of these memory cue points because playback will stop when you do that. So I can show you how that works in Rekordbox. And remember that these two buttons here are the equivalent of these buttons on your CDJ. And on the XDJ, we have the same things. They're just not a physical button. They're up here on the touch screen. So if the track is playing and we want to go to a different memory cue, playback stops. So that is a disadvantage with using these versus hot cues, because playback is stopped whenever you select one of them. So that's the whole point of having hot cues, is it allows us a way to jump to a preset point that we've saved without interrupting playback. So I'm going to throw a couple of hot cues into this song. So we just move the needle near a beat, click an available hot cue, and there it is. And to do a loop, we first create a loop and then click one of these available hot cue pads, and it will be a loop. And you can see how these will behave. So I can start playing the song from anywhere, like from the beginning. Click on one of the hot cues and it just jumps to that point. Now from this first one, playback will just continue on forward. From the second one, it will give me a loop because that's how I created it. So when I select that one, and just keep looping until I shut it off. I'm going to show you one little trick that you can use by combining an active loop and a hot cue. So we've talked quite a bit about this active loop here in the end, which I think is one of the most useful features in Rekordbox. So this is something that will turn itself on when we reach that point. But what if we don't always want to wait to get to that point? What if this is a really nice part to mix over, and we want to be able to have the option of jumping to that point instantaneously? So we want to have it both ways. We want to be able to just play up to this point and have it kick itself on, but we also want to have the option of just instantly jumping there if we feel like it. So the way to do that would be to put a hot cue directly on top of this active loop. So here's our active loop. We can create a hot cue loop right on top of it in the same place. So we'll have the arrow icon for our memory cue, and then laid over that, we have this letter here for our hot cue loop. And so that gives us both options. We can just let the song play to this point, the active loop will turn on, or we can be at some other point in the song, and then we can jump to that point with the hot cue. Let's see. One other thing I want to mention about hot cues is the fact that you might not always have 8 hot cues available to you. You can see we can create 8 here in Rekordbox, but these will not all be available to you on every type of Pioneer player. On the CDJ 2000 Nexus 2, all 8 are available. So you can see we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, so we access them with these buttons over here. So 8 hot cues available on the Nexus 2. However, on the Nexus 1, we have only 3 hot cues. And as far as I know, there's no way to to load more than 3 or use more than 3. I don't know, you might be able to see them in the waveform display, but you can't actually use them. My guess is they don't even load. And on the XDJ 1000 Mark II, you have 8 hot cues available to you. So just something to bear in mind, that if you're not sure what type of player you're going to be playing on when you perform, you might want to limit the amount of hot cues that you create to 3, just so that you're not thrown off by the rest of them being unavailable, or just make these first 3 your most important ones and understand that if you use any more than that in Rekordbox, they will not be available to you if you're playing on a CDJ 2000 Nexus 1. All right, that concludes our video. I hope this has been useful. Thanks for watching.